All right. Welcome, everyone. Aha. Apparently there is important alerts that my calendar wants to tell me. So yes, it actually is my work machine. Welcome, everyone. I'm Toivola from Ericsson, Finland. And one Finnish trait that you may know is that we like to be exactly on time. So I will start exactly on time, but no worries to people who are still taking their coffee listening to me talk. I will be showing a couple of slides about Ericsson in the beginning. So there's a little bit of time there. The presentation is, it's mostly about how to choose metrics. Then implementing metrics and doing the culture change to use them smartly. I don't think I could explain that in detail, and I don't think 45 minutes would be enough for anyone for that subject. 45 minutes is a tough one for this subject either. So I figured that I'll try to go through the slides fairly rapidly, so that then hopefully we have more time for discussions at the end. As you know, I come from Ericsson. How many of you know Ericsson as a company? Okay, most people, excellent, thank you. Because I've been at Ericsson for 9 months, so I don't really know how well known the company is. And I guess everyone knows that Ericsson is big, right? Okay, but most people don't get how big it is. When I joined Ericsson, I thought that, okay, I come from a 1,000-person company. Maybe Ericsson is like a 10,000-person company. Oh boy, I was wrong. 135 years of technological innovations. When I put these slides together on Wednesday, I found out that Ericsson has actually invented the non-manual switching for telephone networks. So you don't need the lady switching the cables. Ericsson has invented Bluetooth. That was news to me. And I've been using Bluetooth for 10 years. First 4G, commercial 4G in operation by Ericsson. So there's a lot of interesting technological innovation. And why am I talking about Ericsson? Simply for the reason that for your benefit, I'm sharing my views and experience. For my benefit, I get to see this interesting country and meet all these excellent people. And for Ericsson's benefit, I show a couple of slides. So it's a win-win-win. So this is how big Ericsson is. When someone put this slide together, there were 114,000 employees worldwide. 2.5 billion end users. So who's got end users that you measure in billions? Not too many. So yeah, Ericsson is a big deal. And of course, Ericsson wants you to know that because they have, or we have, offices all over the place. We are very interested in good technical people, good leaders. And wouldn't be fair if I didn't say a couple of words about Ericsson Finland. Finland is a country known for a couple of things, such as lakes and sauna, and excellent engineering, turns out. So, any of you can put Finland on the map there? Wow. I don't want to go over there and try to put Ukraine on the map. That would be embarrassing. Anyway, I made a little pointer, so there it is. And it's not a Finnish-speaking site at that, so I think we have 20 or 30 different nationalities working in Finland. Hint, hint. And a couple of words about me, because it makes sense to understand, oh no, corporate messaging client is trying to, yeah, it's the other guy who wants to take a look at the weekly report. Yeah, he should know where I am. He sits next to me. Okay, so where I come from, I've been doing software for about 17 years professionally. I had an engineering career, mainly focused around quality test automation, such things. I've been into Agile for quite a bit. Then, as my Agile implementations got bigger, I got into Lean. And I'm one of those guys that you can have an excellent constructive argument with about these subjects. I do like being interactive. So even though I'm going to try to be pretty quick about the slides, I do hope that you put your hand up if I say something that's really unclear, like use terminology which is not well known, or I say something that sounds like I'm an idiot, which means that it might have gone out wrong, or maybe then we have something to clear. So please do pay attention, do interrupt me if you feel like it. And I try to be a little bit provocative, because I do realize I'm standing between you and your food. So I need to somehow keep you guys awake, even though you have been seeing a couple of PowerPoints already today. So it's okay to be a little bit, pokey? Cool. The latter part of the presentation is about a case. And of course, you want to hear just a little bit what kind of case. So it is about a Finnish security software product house, which is operating and selling globally, about 1,000 people, several R&D sites, many products, millions of end users. And while there were other sales channels as well, the main sales channel was teleoperators. That's something that's always interesting to hear, because whoever is selling to big corporations, they always say that that's different. So yeah, we did that different as well. And then we get to measuring stuff. So people like measuring stuff. Or maybe it's certain kind of people, but people do like measuring things. And especially organizations with managers and directors and vice presidents and see some things, they like measuring things. However, it's not always clear to the people or to the organizations why we are measuring something. What do we intend to do with it? And for some people, it seems that measuring is just fun because you get to measure. And I do recognize that in myself as well. I mean, I like knowing my heartbeat when I go jogging. I don't do much with it, but it's fun to have that statistic. But at least I know that I'm not doing anything really serious with it, and I haven't tied my weekly pocket money to that. When we talk about metrics and measuring, we should realize that they are a pretty powerful tool. They bring visibility, they bring direction, they bring focus. So, like any powerful tool, if you take a fool and you give them a powerful tool, it doesn't make them a better person. It just makes them more dangerous, right? So kind of before you put metrics behind some initiative, kind of give a little bit of thought that you're sure that you're measuring the right things for the right purpose. Who knows some really good screw-ups with metrics? Oh, Tom would, yes. Okay. Would someone want to quickly share one? Sorry? Wrong numbers. So nice metric, but completely wrong data. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen that happening. Estimating defects in story points. Oh, I can top that. How about estimating inflow and outflow of bugs weekly from here until end of July? June. Just did that last week. Lines of code and unit test coverage. Oh, we can have a good argument on that. I don't know if we will have time, but let's see. I collected some here. which most people find humorous unless they find them frustrating. So like metrics a lot, don't really understand about metrics. Or measure stuff that's easy to measure, because it's easy to measure, and that makes it interesting, and that makes it important. Or measure a lot and make a huge database of data, and that's it. Mission accomplished. Or decide on a measurement and make that super important, tie people's salary to it before you've actually tried measuring the thing. Or measuring everything. Just measure everything. All things possible to measure, you measure them. Or just one thing. That's the kind of pendulum goes in the other end. There's just one thing that's important in this organization. Only one thing. I hope they picked really, really carefully. Then, good management practice. Copy from whoever is making a lot of money. And assume that that's why they're making a lot of money. And then, of course, put the money, people's money, like someone was just saying that, Greg, I think, that if your livelihood depends on the metrics, I mean, how often do we exactly know in software development this is a 7? No, we think might be a 7, might be a 9, might be a 5. If I put a 9, I'll get a bigger bonus. Maybe I put a 9. End of trustworthiness of that metric. Yeah. Sometimes I show metrics and I'm told that ain't so. You know, we have a TR turnaround time of 6 weeks on optimal circumstances. I don't believe that. Okay. Who wants to add something juicy to the list? Sorry? You want a solution? Okay, let's go forward. Not sure I can give you one, but I can give you what I think is the point of metrics, especially when used professionally. I have here 3 different groups. I have the doers and the experts and the leaders. But in a small organization, it might be the same guy. There's something like a reality there. And that's the thing that we're actually interested in, hopefully. So we measure the reality, and we get some kind of data. Based on that, somebody puts together some kind of report on which the experts and the leaders can do an analysis. And based on the analysis, we can make some decisions to take action. Hopefully like this sort of tuning action and not the kind of like action. And then we hope that the action actually tunes the reality and not directly the metrics results. I've even included that arrow because I find that so common. So trying to make a decision, to take action, to impact the reality. So that when we measure again, we get a slightly different report. We get an idea. That thing we decided last month, was it a good thing? Was it a bad thing? Did it have any impact at all? So you'd want to run this. Of course, this looks like the OODA loop or the PDCA or, you know, lots of people have loops. This is my loop. Sorry, was there a question? No, just trying to attract friends. That's good as well. So, we want useful metrics. I guess most people want useful metrics. It's good to have them. So I went to a little bit deeper on like what is useful when you talk about metrics. And I figured that useful metric is something that's practical, so it's cheap and easy enough to measure. It doesn't mess up the entire organization measuring it. It's value indicating, and this is if you can come up with a better term, I would love that. So the point is that it's not only a means to an end, but it actually indicates whether we are producing the value that we want to produce, whatever it is for the organization. Actionable. So when we see that it's 17, and we would like it to be 25, we have some idea what to do about it. Responsive, which means that when we do a decision and we make a change, the number actually change at a reasonable, interval. Let's think about quarterly results. Your company made made extra well 28% margin this quarter. So that's good, okay? But what did you do right? No idea. When was it? Probably, early last year, something like that. And of course, you want it to be trustworthy, accurate and trustworthy. So you know that it's 17 and not 7. And it's not the smiling guy who comes and says, okay, yeah, it's 25, and I get full bonus. Right, okay, might be 25, might not. Of course, having all these nice criteria presents the problem, which I guess has become obvious to you already, which is that loads of metrics are 1 or 2 or 3 of those things. But I haven't so far figured anything that's all of them. So let's look at a couple of different ways of looking at different metrics, choosing metrics, if you will. So here's a chart. The further up it is, the more accurate it is. The further to the right it is, the more lagging it is. So the less responsive. I should have redone this the other way. Sorry for that. There's a bunch of typical software organization metrics there. And the placement has been, me and a couple of smart pals put them there. So the placement is not the whole point, but it's pretty right. And we see that there's a happy corner, of course, the accurate, responsive ones. And then there's the unhappy corner, the lagging, inaccurate ones. And from here, we see, to your happiness, that lines of code is pretty much the best thing that we can measure. Because it's very accurate, right? We can often measure it down to the last line. And it's pretty responsive. Whenever someone makes a commit, we can measure it like, say, every 10 minutes. We get a new number, and it's accurate. Utilization of resources, work hours, bug count, they're all there. If I had unit test coverage on the chart, it would be up there as well. But then again, if we take a different angle, so now value indicating goes up, and practical goes to the right. So we have a different happy corner and a different unhappy corner. And suddenly, the lines of code is it's not very high. It doesn't really indicate the value very well, does it? Or like in the nuclear industry example, it is counter-indicating value. So now we have financials, staff engagement, development lead time as the prime indicators of value, which are also practical to measure. Financials a little bit less so because you need a bunch of accountants to do that. But most people have a bunch of accountants already given by the organization. So easy enough to measure. So from here we see that depending on the viewpoint that we take, depending on what out of those usefulness things we value the most, we get a different happy corner. One more, just to make the point. So now we have value indicating up, actionable to the right, and we find ourselves with work in progress, net promoter score, development lead time, staff engagement. If your net promoter score is -40, it's pretty clear that there's something wrong with your product or your service. Go ask the support guys, they will be able to tell you what. Right? And if it's +70, maybe you don't need another feature to grow. Maybe it's something else that your business needs to grow. If your work in progress is like twice your yearly budget, might be something clogging up the system. Ooh, the back of my mind started doing a little mental exercise on what is the work in progress of the project where I'm currently at. It's got 2 digits in it, and it ends in millions of euros. Then we talk about trustworthiness. So regardless of the kind of the other stuff, you probably want it to be trustworthy. Otherwise, it only has more kind of like humor value. Don't know really who made this. It was a Theta blog at Blogspot, but I think it's such a beautifully kind of illustrated meter that I wanted to put it in. Basically, you want to get the trustworthiness right, and one of the ways that one of the easier ways of getting rid of trustworthiness is adding the money. So you add the money, and you're pretty sure that you are screwing the metric and not changing reality. Not always. Can be done. Very powerful when done right. I'm just saying be careful. Then there's going to be the chosen solution of the security product company, and the chosen solution is a multi-level metric system. So what is a multi-level metric system? It's pretty obvious once you kind of think about it, but it took me years to figure out that this is how it works. So there's your organization in your box, and it's got some people there doing some work. And then it's got some bosses there who are trying to make the work, be more and more productive. And then you have some experts there with the metrics who are measuring it and giving feedback to the bosses. And the bosses have another set of metrics on a higher level, which they are reporting upwards. These are not the same as the local metrics, because there is another box next to you and a bigger box where your little box belongs. And the other smaller box is also producing similar upper level metrics for these bigger bosses who are trying to make the two small boxes work very well. But they also report upwards, a yet higher level of metrics, because there is another big box next to it with some really big bosses up there, right? Now, if you take those really big bosses and you get them to look at the really down-to-earth practical lines of code things, that's probably going to end up in tears, right? So it does make sense, but of course it does make sense to provide data for the really big bosses so that they can make better leadership decisions. So on different levels of abstraction, you need different kinds of metrics. It's so simple, it took me years to figure it out. So what was chosen? Since the company is in software business, or business of any kind, financials is an obvious one. Very holistic, very accurate. Unfortunately, not very responsive and not very actionable. So it's difficult to say, when did we do a smart decision and what was the smart decision? Or, okay, now we are down minus 20%. Why? And then the finger pointing starts. Since it's a software business, it was decided to measure all kinds of software-related things like bug count and code base, and yes, unit test coverage, which are accurate and responsive and easy to measure. And they are, okay, it says insightful, it should say actionable. It's actionable for the engineers who are working on the project and understand about the code base. They are both hands in Git every day. So for them, that stuff is actionable. But it's very local, it's a means to an end only, it's not the end value that we're after. But it's sometimes really good to know how many bugs you have open. Because if it's suddenly doubled from last week, maybe something should be done. Like say, stop the line, if we go on the lean side a bit. Then there's the law that says thou shalt follow work hours. So we follow work hours. Accurate, responsive, and required. And to look after the people and the culture, which, whether investors like it or not, are the most important capital in a software organization, we measure staff engagement. Because if you are doing nice profits, but your staff engagement is in the toilet, what's going to happen next year? Seriously. Sell. Okay. Very holistic, very easy to measure. Not necessarily as actionable. Someone once asked me that, how can that be easy to measure? It's really, really difficult. Let's try. On Monday, you are going to work, most of you. Is that all right? Is it meh, or is it I don't want to go there? Please indicate. All right. With a picture of that, thank you, I could do the sum. So practical enough, easy enough to measure. And here we come to the accuracy, easy enough to measure to a sufficient accuracy. And then we come to the interesting beef, which is how did we decide to measure operational excellence in software business? Because that I left out. We had the really high level, then we had the bottom level. So the beef is coming, right? A small set of mutually supporting metrics, which for those of you who have studied lean are not very surprising. We decided to measure, why am I missing that? Lead time as amount of calendar days from investment decision to first deployment at paying customer. Flow of value, so features and business goals going out of the door during a quarter and how much they're worth put together. The width of the customer smile as the Net Promoter Score. I had a discussion with someone about Net Promoter Score yesterday. And then the unfinished things, the work in progress. And when you do that, it could look something like this. We had, of course, several views to all of those, but this is an example. I've fiddled with the labels, so you can't actually figure out what was going on. But you can see, for example, that oranges and apples take about the same amount of lead time. When you decide this business goal we want out, how long it takes to get out. But the time is consumed in very different activities. Oranges are the kind of organization that doesn't plan at all, just starts doing. And it does furiously, but then the delivery takes a long time. Apples have a little bit of figuring out time, then they develop it for a pretty long time, but then they deploy in one day. And yes, these are verified numbers. Yeah, of course, I didn't bother to change the actual numbers. I just changed the labels. With bananas, who cares? They're fast enough, right? You're doing good. Keep doing whatever it is you're doing. Net Promoter Score, loads of information available on the net. The work in progress in this case, I think it's backlog items, number of backlog items. And that's actually sufficiently accurate. And the interesting one, of course, is value throughput, right? I was talking with Jeffrey Liker in one of his seminars that why is it so impossible to get our vice presidents to get lean? They just demonstrate that with these improvements you can, improve the performance of the organization. We can't measure the performance of the organization. Ah. So how many of you think that there's, a good way of measuring the real performance of a software development organization? Okay. But you are a keynote speaker, so you're allowed. All right. So while waiting for him, this is the plastic Tom Gilb saying that you can measure it to a sufficient understanding, to a better understanding than not understanding it. Okay, so why did we choose these things? You can see there's the system dynamic, the NPS influence favorably the value throughput. The work in progress influences the value throughput and the lead time. The lead time influences the value throughput, and those influence the money, which is what we're after. Long-term, sustainable money with happy people doing it. So we chose these because they are more insightful, more actionable than the financials. They respond faster, but then again, they are not like lines of code, so they actually indicate value much better. They are accurate enough to be very useful. They don't need to be dead accurate, just need to be accurate enough to be useful. Practical enough to measure, takes a little bit of effort, but not terribly much. And they are mutually supporting. So no one has told me so far a good way of gaming all of these. You can game any one of these, but it will screw up one or more of the others. So that's the layers there, and that's the end of the slide set. So we do have a little bit of time for questions. That would be how many minutes? About 10 minutes or more for questions. Maybe I'll go back to here. Oh, I thought that loads of you were just waiting to shoot me down. Okay. I have a mic.
So you are taking a strong assumption about the levels of, how you said that, abstraction, right? So why, these levels of abstractions introduce loss of information, loss of goals, loss of understanding, and on each level you have very different goals. Why instead of, having this in mind and as a strong assumption, not to bring down understanding of all of these KPIs and be more flat? I think the majority of people here expect to work in more flat organization. And from this point of view, I believe Ericsson is one of the worst organizations in the world.
Oh, it's nothing compared to something public. Sorry, private. Public. Meaning not public as in public company, but as in government organizations. Yeah, I do make some assumptions there. On a smaller organization, these levels are much closer to each other. If you have a 3-man company, you probably are both dealing with the lines of code and the quarterly results or monthly results or whose credit card still has some credit left. There are impressive flat organizations out there, and I do feel that that is a good way to organize. However, I would love to go into the organizational design stuff, but it's not really the talk. So I am giving this from the point of view that you end up in a fairly traditional organization. Yes, I do think that flat works better if you can make it work, if it doesn't get chaotic. So, yeah, I'm not saying that it's better to have loads of management. Yeah, besides the case company is not Ericsson.
But when you assume it, you say it's normal. You should work there. You should change it, as well as to change the metrics that you are presenting as well. So,
sure, you can do that, or maybe you can do that. If you are in a position to improve the entire organization, why just do with the metrics? However, sometimes you are in a position where it's easy to influence the metrics and near impossible to influence the line organization. So, I believe that you should go for the big goals, yes. But then again, when it comes to prioritization of effort, it makes sense to go for the achievable ones maybe first and start planning for the big ones, right? Yeah. Any other ones?
Now you can? Yep,
Yes.
Great. So on the way to defining the best set of metrics for software development, did you try to evaluate the applicability of basic earned value management on the lower level, let's say team level or so on? Because usually it's applicable for middle and upper management. So did you make the attempt to apply standard earned value metrics on low levels?
The short answer is no, we did not.
Was you blocked with something to just decided to avoid doing that?
The longer explanation is we had an R&D organization where there were a lot of people thinking like you guys are probably thinking, and then we had a product management organization where people were thinking quite differently, and these were 2 different cultures and 2 different silos, and let's say that we needed to or we wanted to start with the kind of metrics that we would have that the people managing the product and managing the company would understand and would believe in and would support, implementing that. Of course, we were dreaming of more rigorous approaches with more granularity and pushing stuff down and so on. But we figured that if we gain some kind of idea how good our investments are, which we're making in software, it's already a huge leap forward. So let's start with that. Still 10 minutes. Excellent.
Ask a very quick question, follow-up, and pass the mic to the next questioner. How do you struggle with building up the culture of all level employees in the company to support these metrics? Like not to make it happen when culture eats company for breakfast.
Yeah, and structure maintains culture, wasn't it? So that's what Greg said. Yeah, the idea was we figured that we have a good chance of a culture change if we are able to show the status quo. So we are able to show how things are today, what's happening in the company. As you saw from one of the slides, there were huge differences in, for example, lead time. You had the bananas and you had the nuclear submarines, which took a very different time to develop and deliver. So that was something that the top management had never looked at. That, oh, is it this different here compared to that? So lots of interesting and slightly painful discussions took place when we started producing these things every quarter. Did that answer the question? Excellent. More questions? We can actually have a discussion. Where's the guy who promised?
I'm sorry? Yeah.
Yeah.
How often do you review your KPIs? Because sometimes you have to shift the angle on which metrics are more important. I believe this changes from time to time, for example, as long as organization changes inside as well. Or you believe that the structure will be and culture will be the same all the time?
I have to say I had a little bit of trouble hearing and understanding the question.
KPIs are always focusing on what's more important for organization. So in case if you, for example, have the organization developing for a very long time and you need to change some focus in what you do, for example, in the next year, in the next follow-up year, how often do you recommend or do you review KPIs for your metrics, for what you...
So how often would you review changing the metrics?
Right, right.
I don't want to recommend anything on that. Once you start using your metric, once you figure out what do we want, then you figure out which metrics support that which we want. How often should we look at them? Then you start looking at them that often. You will, pretty soon discover whether they work for you or not. And if you discover they don't work for you, hell yeah, go change. If they do work for you, don't.
Yeah, but I mean, in case of Ericsson, for example, so you use the same metrics for all the time as long as you are in Ericsson for this year. I believe you told that you are a year in Ericsson, right?
Yeah, I'm actually very new at Ericsson. I've been there 9 months. Oh. I used to be 16 years in this other company. Unfortunately, I will be leaving already today from Kiev, but as long as you can find me, do approach me for a discussion. I do love discussing this stuff, and thank you for being a good audience.